Welcome back to our journey through Exodus. Last time, we saw the Israelites miraculously cross the Red Sea. Now, their journey takes them to the foot of a mountain that will forever change their history, Mount Sinai. After 3 months in the desert, the Israelites camped before the imposing peak of Mount Sinai. But this was no ordinary mountain. It was shrouded in thick smoke, trembling and quaking, because the very presence of God had descended upon it. It was here, in this place of awesome power, that God would establish his covenant with his people. Moses, their leader, was called to ascend the mountain, to enter the cloud and speak with the Lord. From the peak, God's voice boomed like thunder, accompanied by flashes of lightning. He declared his intention to make a covenant with the people he had rescued from Egypt. Down below, the Israelites were filled with a mixture of fear and awe. They were witnessing the raw, untamed holiness and majesty of the Almighty God. This wasn't just a powerful deity. This was the creator of the universe, present with them. God called Israel to be something special, a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. They were to be a people set apart, dedicated to following his ways and reflecting his character to the world. But to stand in the presence of such holiness required preparation. God instructed them to consecrate themselves, to wash their clothes and their bodies, to prepare their hearts for an encounter with the sacred. His presence was powerful, life-altering, and not to be approached lightly. The people trembled as they heard his commands, beginning to understand that the God who had delivered them with mighty plagues and the parted sea also demanded their reverence, their complete obedience, and their unwavering faith. Then, from the heart of the fire and smoke, God spoke the 10 Commandments. These were not just rules. They were the very foundation of a just and holy society, the framework for their relationship with him and with each other. Etched into stone tablets by the finger of God, these commands were clear and absolute. First, you shall have no other gods before me. This established ultimate loyalty. God alone was their deliverer and their king. Second, you shall not make for yourself an idol. They were not to reduce the infinite creator to a finite object made by human hands. Their worship was to be directed to the unseen, all-powerful God. Third, you shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God. His name was holy and was to be treated with the utmost respect. Fourth, remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. This was a gifted day of rest, a weekly reminder of God's creation and their liberation from constant labor in Egypt. Fifth, honor your father and your mother. This commandment established respect and order within the family, the bedrock of society. The next 5 commandments dealt with their relationships with one another. You shall not murder. Life is sacred. You shall not commit adultery. The sanctity of marriage and family must be protected. You shall not steal. Respect for property and the well-being of others is crucial. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. Truth and justice must prevail. And finally, you shall not covet. This went to the heart, addressing the desires that lead to sinful actions. Each command was a brilliant brushstroke, painting a picture of God's perfect desire for his people to live in justice, holiness, and love. The experience was completely overwhelming for the people. The thunder was deafening, the lightning was blinding, the mountain was covered in smoke, and a powerful trumpet blast grew louder and louder. It was terrifying. They had seen God's power in Egypt, but this was different. This was his direct presence, and they feared they would die if they heard his voice any longer. They pleaded with Moses, "You speak to us, and we will listen. But do not let God speak to us, or we will die." In that moment, Moses' role as a mediator was solidified. He would go up to God on their behalf and bring God's words down to them. Moses reassured them, explaining that God's presence was meant to instill in them a reverent fear, not a fear that paralyzes, but one that leads to obedience. Their faith was now being tested and defined. It wasn't just about believing in God's power. It was about trusting and obeying Him, even when it was frightening. It required both courage to stand before a holy God and humility to accept His commands. God's revelation didn't end with the 10 Commandments. He continued to give Moses a detailed set of laws, often called the Book of the Covenant. These laws would govern every aspect of their worship, their justice system, and their community life. He provided instructions for altars, for how to treat servants, for penalties for violence, and for restitution for theft. Throughout these laws, God emphasized that this covenant was a relationship. It was a two-way street. If they remained faithful and obedient, they would experience His continued blessing, protection, and provision. But if they turned away and disobeyed, there would be consequences. The people had already seen God's faithfulness in leading them out of Egypt, providing them with manna and water in the desert. The covenant now became the formal foundation for their identity as His chosen nation, a people bound to Him by promise and law. To formalize this sacred agreement, Moses came down from the mountain and told the people all the Lord's words and laws. He then built an altar at the foot of the mountain with 12 pillars, one for each tribe of Israel. Young men were chosen to offer burnt offerings and fellowship offerings to the Lord. Moses took the blood from the sacrifices, sprinkled half on the altar, and then he read the Book of the Covenant aloud to all the people. Their response was unified and decisive. With one voice, they declared, "All that the Lord has spoken, we will do, and we will be obedient." Their commitment was now verbalized. Moses then took the remaining blood and sprinkled it on the people, saying, "This is the blood of the covenant that the Lord has made with you." This act sealed the agreement. Their journey was now defined by this promise. God's glory continued to fill the mountain, a visible, powerful, and constant reminder of His presence and the covenant He had made with them. These laws and instructions were incredibly practical. They included guidance for ensuring justice among the people, with a special emphasis on caring for the most vulnerable, the poor, the widows, the orphans, and the foreigners living among them. They were commanded not to charge interest on loans to the poor, and to return a neighbor's cloak by nightfall if it was taken as a pledge. God's covenant wasn't just a spiritual contract. It was a blueprint for building a just and compassionate society. It shaped how they would live in community with one another, day in and day out. The 10 Commandments and the accompanying laws revealed God's profound wisdom and His deep desire for a people who would reflect His own righteousness and holiness. Through this dramatic encounter at Mount Sinai, the giving of the law and the sealing of the covenant, the Israelites learned a crucial lesson. Their freedom from Egypt wasn't just about escaping slavery. It was an invitation into something far greater, an invitation to live under God's loving guidance, to be transformed into a people who would reflect His holiness, and to walk in His ways. Obedience, reverence, and faith were no longer abstract concepts. They were the very foundation of their new identity as God's chosen people, set apart for His glorious purpose. If this incredible story of the covenant at Mount Sinai, the giving of the 10 Commandments, and God's holy presence inspires you, please give this video a thumbs up, share it with a friend, and subscribe for more epic Bible stories. Make sure to hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next chapter in our Exodus series. Let me know in the comments which part of the Sinai encounter moves you the most. Thanks for watching.